All right, hey, what's going on, guys? So, as a mini kind of wrap up to averages before we look at even more examples in this case and jump into advanced understanding of entry cycles, momentum cycles, MA usage, and entries, right? We just basically very simply need to understand that averages, in terms of what we do, show us if money is coming in, like it was in prior, or if it's continuing to come in, show us that enough money has come in for something to be redemanded or continue on a given move, to show us if something needs time or might be ready, right? These are the reasons we use these averages. And again, one important note that I want to make before we move on to anything else is that you might find success with other ones. I am teaching you and showing you exactly what I've come to use myself, what I personally like to use myself, what I personally will then set up for myself to look at overall data or to screen for things. So we're going to get into screening later in terms of how you can use the understandings you have now to screen stuff. For instance, I traded Tesla today on the day that I'm recording this, and this is what it generally looks like for me. This is a EMA 10, 10, and 20 across two different time frames. I'll actually show you guys what all these are so you don't get too confused. But basically, hourly and daily EMAs, hourly and daily EMAs. So I'm just looking at those 10 and 20s. But you can see there's a few other options here. So what I want you to understand is that you are not locked into a box regarding how you can run your analysis. If for some reason you just really like using a 20 and a 50, or a 10 and a 50, or a 50 and a 100, or a 50 and a 200, and that's just the thing that makes sense to you for easy moves, you understand flushes better that way, you see the price action better through that lens, I want you to remember through that lens, here you go, right? Those are glasses. I just want you to remember that you can pick and choose the way you're going to make this work for you, because again, there is no one set way to see everything. This is a market of orders, and it's ever moving and ever evolving and ever changing, but the things that remain true from the very beginning will remain true to this day. And just to give you like an easy example of this, if I go to something like DJI, which is Dow Jones, so this is like overall stock market for, and this probably has a ton of data, right? This probably goes back years, right? This probably, yeah, like look at this. This goes back to like 1990, like before I'm even alive, right? So here, I wasn't even alive here. But I know, because of how markets operate, it's going to follow the same steps that I've always gone through using the averages that I'm generally looking at. So even though the market is a snowflake, it's ever kind of moving, each setup is going to be a little bit different, but do the same thing. The conceptual approach to understanding markets and movements are always going to be the same. So if the weekly moves into accumulation here and kind of starts pausing, I know the daily here is going to be doing what? It's going to be moving in full blown accumulation MBs. Momentum MB1 goes sideways now. Potential MB2 goes sideways. This is a buildup of momentum MB2 or 3 now, right? With the expectancy that it's going to lead to another move higher. This would be a time for me to either trade this asset or trade other assets like other stocks, because the expectancy is that this here will lead to a move higher into a new stage 2. It's the same thing on repeat. There is nothing new in this market. I could go back to, what is this, 1985, and the move in terms of how the cycle operates, how moves work, how the momentum cycle is going to work across multiple EVCs, and then what the timeframes of entry are going to look like here. And guess what? If I go inside of it, guys, don't lose your minds here. Okay, I can't actually go lower. Maybe we'll go to a 4-hour. Okay, we don't have lower than that. It doesn't let me go lower. It's too far back. But very simply, you're going to see the exact same things inside of here. You're going to see those accumulation MBs into momentum MBs that could be tradable based on where they are, into momentum MBs up here that become management, right? And then you have this MMB1, MMB2, this is MMB3. So again, the expectancy here is that this is either going to now go again for another move, maybe stop somewhere here, come back, and then go for a move, and then stop somewhere up here. Because at the moment, it's in a momentum cycle. And there you go, right? The market is a repetition of the exact same things. Now, personally, as I've explained, for my given EVC, I am most interested in that 5, 10, and 20 because it's the clearest representation of momentum for me. I want to make it very clear that based on who you are, you might find success with a few others, or it might be easier for you to view others. Now, in the event that you're asking me something, or working together, or I'm trying to help you establish something, or you're looking at one of my trades, you're always going to see me using the same 5, 10, and 20. And that's where my analysis is going to come from. That's where my experience comes from. And that's what leads me to decide, what am I going to trade? When am I going to trade it? What assets am I looking at? Why am I looking at them? How might I look at those assets through the lens of my actual screener and set that up? And that might be different for you if you choose a different path. So I just want to to make two things very clear here. One, I'm showing you what works the best for me, what makes the most sense to me, what colors the clearest possible delivery of momentum to me. But at the same time, I want to make the second caveat, which is that this is not a black and white market. For some of you, you might prefer the feel of other averages or the look of other averages or the look of those averages on those timeframes. Because remember, as I said before, why my averages? Why am I happy with my averages? And why did I change the averages over time? Well, this is what I understood about using an EVC and a general approach to this kind of structured way of looking at price, because what I'm doing is I'm actually using all these MAs technically on one time frame, but I'm doing it across multiple to define if I should keep watching something. And it leads to, just like you saw a second ago, and you're going to see more examples in webinars in the future and as we keep doing this. But here's 1985, a random move begun that I ignored from that weekly. The weekly started a push. I told you it would now lead into momentum MBs. And this is that delivery, right? Momentum MB 1, 2, maybe 3. This is probably the fourth. And this is probably the last move now where if you're in a trade, you want to manage your trades now. You want to let this either take off and then fail, or what is very expected, right? A failure back down and a reset over some time, because that's how markets operate, because the cycle never changes. So you get that last move and you get that new failure that creates new accumulation and leads to a new momentum MB1, probably momentum MB2, and goes higher. And it's the exact same thing on repeat back from 1986, 1985, 2024, 2025, as we're about to go into 2025. Markets don't change. The conceptuals have always remained true no matter what you're looking at. Bitcoin, DJI, FX pairs, if they're trending, very important to remember that. Futures, stocks. Now, personally, I'm going to be mostly looking at stocks. I'm going to walk you guys through how you can also access the same kind of markets and trade the same kind of markets, even if you don't have potentially high account sizes, because guess what? Stocks have the most amount of assets under themselves and provide the best kind of overnight and stuff, holding leverage, all this stuff. I'll explain all this to you guys later, but ultimately, the same thing repeats itself over and over and over again. And something that I need you to understand about averages, right, is that we are using averages to basically do what we walk through here, right? This is ultimately what averages are doing. They're showing us that money come in. They're showing us money sustain moves. They're showing us when we're in that momentum or that we're not in the momentum. We're seeing how orders are coming into the market. When we do that across timeframes, we're seeing how orders are continuously put into the market or how they pause to get reaccumulated, kind of like what you see right here, how they pause to get reaccumulated, because on a weekly, what does that become? That becomes a pullback to the 5, 10, and 20. Here we go. Let's go to the weekly, and here you have it. That's that pullback to the 5. As it gets to the 5, you can see it basically gets bought up with poor selling at the rising 10 and 20 to continue that move higher. And guess what? All of a sudden, from when we started that mini kind of test that I was doing for you from back here, right? This is that accumulation sustaining itself and starting that move. And we've gone into momentum MB 1, 1, 2. And what can we expect? This is probably going to pause at some point, go into 3, pause, go into 4, and then fail, because that's the approach of the overall market. There's 3, it goes, there's 4, maybe it goes, and now we expect a failure because we have potentially played out a momentum cycle. So, okay, maybe this is 4, maybe one more move, and then failure, just like that. Professional beauty. Any time frame, overall approach, understanding of asset movement, and again, from that point that we were looking at on the daily. So hopefully you're all seeing how this thing is just a repetition. That was that reaccumulation that led to those new momentum MBs. We get another one that starts the momentum MBs here, and we get that failure because this leg here was that fourth momentum MB of a C timeframe, EVC. This is why we use multiple timeframes. And again, I like the 5, 10, and 20 personally for momentum basis, and that's why I'm teaching you the 5, 10, 20 and teaching you to think with the 5, 10, 20 because it's what works the best for me, and because it's the settings that I'm using to overall look at and find markets. Because when I have this all taken care of and I have filters already on, you can see I have 53 options to choose from. Now, of course, if I take off all the filters, which I don't really want to do right now because the filters literally just give me exactly what I want to see. But if I take them all off, there'll be around 6,000 markets here. This is the beauty of having ways and tools, and why you're part of MentFX, as you guys can see. having software that helps you define what you should be watching or what you should potentially consider, right? Like I probably skip this because of this little reading here. It's just one of the rules I have. And I can look at all of these, and I have, right? I've traded MSTR. You guys have seen that on this portal material. I've traded Tesla. It's on here somewhere. I've traded or looked at Peloton, Tesla. I'm trading and looking at GME. You guys have seen what GME has been capable of. Coin, I'm trading that too, right? These are all assets that I'm trading because all I do is I find them through a few filters for what I want to see. I then look at the EVC for where I am in the cycles of the momentum for the V and the C, and where I am in the cycle for my entry. And I try to look for those accumulation MB / momentum MB entries into the move because, well, these are the things being accumulated by very large money, large institutions, and great, I can be there for them. So that's the power of that. Now, again, very simply, I just want you to all to realize, like, you can work with a few of these, but my preference is that 5, 10, 20. It gives me the clearest screenshot of what a market is doing, if it's worth trading, if where it is currently is worth trading, because again, that's the one thing that has led me to develop this understanding of if I even want to touch something, right? When I went to the weekly and went back here, right, you guys saw, I just said, wherever we started this thing, I think back here, right? It was here. I didn't touch it. The second it came up and started pausing, I'm like, okay, this is going to be a clear daily cycle because of what it's doing, because of the fact that price was bullish, moving bullish, pulled back to the averages, maybe went into distribution, reaccumulated higher, is starting to make accumulation MBs. And as it pauses, I assume the momentum MB cycle. And as I drop down into the daily, because of where we are, being bought up at a rising 10, 20, and 5 on the weekly, which is a daily, if we do the math, is a daily 50, 100, and 200, right? Because it's a times 10 multiple. But then I go inside of that now. Well, that's all going to be using the 5, 10, 20 in a cycle that's now starting to be worth watching for the same reasons we've already discussed. Boom. We already had the slope start. Price pauses a momentum MB beautifully on the rising 10, 20, got bought up to go. Everything slopes upwards. Money is coming in. Demand is coming in. As selling comes in, the selling is unable to just break down and break down. Instead, it gets bought back up, and that starts another momentum MB cycle. As selling comes in, it's unable to go way down. It gets bought back up, finds itself on the rising 5, 10, and 20. The 5 rule is met here, the cheat code. Price gets bought up at the 5. So that's a rising 10/20 play. You start getting in, price goes. Price sells off, doesn't sell off in a huge way, comes down to the rising 10, 20, keeps going. And that's your momentum cycle until you get extended on the weekly through 4 cycles. You wait for the reset as it did here. The weekly pulls back. This starts a new cycle, goes and goes and goes until the weekly gets extended. And the same thing happens on a market, remember, in 1985. 1985. Another beautiful condition and to remind you, any market, any asset, or same thing, any time frame, any time, right? This is 1985. It's the same moves that we're practicing and learning now. The concepts I'm operating with to trade the market right now, the conceptual approach I'm using, the trend-based cycles that I'm using, were working before I was personally alive, right? I was born in 1999. This is over 14 years before I was born. And yet, had I been alive during a time like this, and had I had the opportunity to trade it, I would be able to trade it with the exact same concepts that you are now seeing and learning. And the beauty is that you have access to all of them. And I have a way to also screen them, which is huge because the screening is a huge part. And you will learn about screening as well. Okay, so that's the last mini caveat on the average side. And now I want to move into either examples. I'm not sure exactly what we're going to do in the next video, but probably examples or advanced cycle with advanced entries. And I will see you all there. Cool. Let's do it.